Hey guys, I just wanted to share some thoughts about the Helios now that I've had it for a couple of weeks. Remember seeing the announcement of this amp with the cool pic of that like torn up 412, and I was like, wow, that looks awesome. But I've already had so many Marshall amps that I was like, I really don't need this amp, right? I'm just gonna skip it, right? And it was funny because people were like, oh, it looks like a Marshall, but it's gonna sound like a Bogner. So it was almost like they thought it was, it was gonna sound like an Ecstasy or something. Not that that's bad, but whatever. So fast forward, people started getting them. First ones started to trickle in, and it seemed that like they were being dumped within days. Like you'd see like someone got it and they liked it, or they didn't like it, whatever, and then it would be dumped on the classified. So, it was kind of like, well, people just trying to make money, or is this thing kind of like a bomb, right? So, it made me really curious, and, we kept talking about the amp, so I figured, you know what, I don't really have anything else to do. I may as well just try it and give it a shot, right? So, here we are, and, I put up a couple of clips and stuff. So, I just want to take a step back, right? Because, I have a lot of amps, and they're all, like, kind of variations on the Marshall circuit, like the BE, it's very, has a lot of low end, it's very refined, it's very smooth, and then I have like my Camerons, which are like, very saturated when you push them to the higher gain settings, and they're almost like Mesa Boogies. And then I have the SE100s, which are kind of like this very thick, crunch tone, very kind of Aldrich modding type thing going on there. So I have a lot of variations, but I always had like kind of a special place in my heart for the Marshall AFD 100 because this amp, it's just scrappy and bright and nasty, and it's just got that really thin Marshall tone. And sometimes you don't want all the bells and whistles, right? Sometimes you just want that tone. And now I'll kind of bring it back to the Helios. So for me, the Helios is kind of like the AFD, at least on the 80s mode. It's kind of like the AFD, but almost a little bit better. It's just a little bit more gain, actually, and a little bit more refined. And it's really just kind of like the perfect 80s metal tone when you think of 80s metal and what it really sounded like. It wasn't super saturated, and it wasn't super thick. It still had that scrappy tone to it. So I really think like the Helios fits perfectly into that kind of like gap between a stock Marshall and some of the ones that have gone a little bit too far, right? So just some things to be aware of functionally, right? So this is a 2-channel amp, right? And the clean channel is set up just like the Brown Eye, the original Brown Eyes, which kind of like that simple clean with the three bright switches, right? So channel 2 has 2 modes. It has 70s mode and 80s mode, and these modes are not foot switchable. So you have to make your decision as to which tone you want to go with, and then you have to set the controls accordingly because when you go to 80s mode, there's more clipping and the volume goes down. So you have to set 70s and 80s modes to where you like it, right? So then now you basically have a 2-channel amp. But one of the things that I want to mention is that people have talked about this on the forums, is that if you're using the hot input, which I think sounds the best for like a high gain in the 80s stuff, and you switch over to the clean channel, it's going to be too hot for the clean channel. So some guy in Rig Talk, and I don't know his screen name, but I'm giving him full credit. So if you're watching this, says he uses an AB box so that when he switches over to the clean channel, he switches to the Plex input, and when he switches to channel 2, he goes to hot input. So if you're gigging and that's important to you, I would give that a shot. I'm probably never going to use the clean channel, so not a concern for me. The other thing that's really cool, and this kind of is where it crosses over into SL68 land, is that you can basically take the EQ out of the mix here. And essentially, it's like having all your tone controls on my SL68 to 10. Bogner likes to say 11, but it's great because it has that really open tone, that really, dimed Marshall tone that, I have kind of in the SL68. So that's an awesome option, and it works on both 70s and 80s mode. What else do we got here? So just to review, channel 1 and channel 2 are foot switchable. The effects loop is also foot switchable and has a master volume. So if you want to use that as kind of like a solo boost, you can do that. The high and low inputs are not foot switchable. Okay. And let's just take a very quick look at the back of the amp. Okay, back of the amp, there's your foot switch input. Effects loop on, and that is foot switchable. Return volume, which you can obviously use as a boost. Bottom, which is not resonance. Resonance kind of, I feel, gives you kind of more thickness in bottom end. This actually just tightens up the bottom end. So that's something to be aware of. Punch, which is pretty self-explanatory. And there's also a 30-watt mode, which, you know, gets really saggy and squishy and stuff. I'll probably never use that mode ever. So one thing I don't want to forget to mention is that from a feel standpoint, this amp is really greasy. It's got no fight. It's a pleasure to play. Just a great amp. So, you know, the conclusion really is that it's a great amp that does not stray from like that core Marshall tone. So if you're looking for that and you truly want that, this is the amp to get. There's no concerns that you know, nothing you should be concerned about as far as I'm concerned. All right, see you guys.